Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Today, well, welcome to the Mars Day. Welcome to another Mars Day. Thank you for being here. Let me get everything set up, the captions, etc. Okay, they should be available now if you like to have the captions on live. Thanks for being here for another live Mars Day. Whether you're here live or whether you're watching on the replay, I appreciate you being here, sharing space and community with me. Mars Days are just a time, they're Patreon only, where we come together virtually, again, live or whenever you drop into the container to talk about the astrology, energy, pull some tarot, chat about whatever. You can ask your questions here or in the comments of these posts. I'm also going to try to remember to, drop those at the beginning of the month. I was dropping like a check-in, ask your questions. I'm going to try to remember to do that moving forward. So any of your questions about astrology or tarot or life or your experience or my experience, whatever it is that you're looking to gain information, clarity, resource, guidance around. Or if you have something that you would like to share your experience and wisdom about, please always feel free to do so. Or if you, would like to drop something like more specifically, reach out to me in any way. And that's part of being in community here. If you have wisdom or guidance or support to share, and it feels accessible to and in alignment with this space, let me know. Okay, so like I said, we're going to go into the astrology, pull some tarot like we normally do today. um and the thing about this is, over the last couple months, I've stopped prepping for them. I started out the Mars days um with very little preparation. And then there were a couple months there where I came with like a lot of preparation. And now I'm back to kind of like very little preparation. And it's not that I'm, it's just, it's flowing more naturally in the spaces, but also like I'm coming back to the root of why I started the Mars days. And if you've been here through the whole Mars Day thing, and we're coming up on a year of starting these Mars days every Tuesday morning, coming together, again, live or whenever you drop into the container. But, I started the Mars days as a way to connect with my Lord of the Year. Mars is my Lord of the Year this year. And I wanted to, my Mars natally is in Taurus in the fifth house. So I wanted a place to be able to flow creatively and just kind of like play, um, and just show up in a very natural way. Um, and, it's very typical of me in my chart to have, for Saturn to have kind of hijacked it and given it structure. Um, and over the eclipses, Mars being activated and my Lord of the Year kind of cut some of that from the space, and I enjoyed it. So all of that to say that I haven't done a lot of prep for this week. So I really want to just kind of feel into the energy. And when I say I haven't done a lot of prep, like I'm looking at the astrology daily. So I know what's happening. So it's easier for me to just kind of like tap in and allow things to flow because I'm in it so much and I do know, the cycles intimately and all of that stuff. So we're going to kind of move through that here just organically. Um, you know, Curtis is dealing with some like life things today and has to run to the to town and drop some stuff off at, so he'll be moving throughout the RV. And so just kind of entering that energy into the container here as well. So if you see me start to trail, fear not, just following my husband around. um, but yeah, so we're finishing November this week. Today is November 28th, 2023. Right now it is 10:06 a.m. A reminder for anyone that the Mars days are now at 10 a.m. Because it's cold and we're entering closer to the winter solstice that happens this month and well in December as we come into December. And I was just feeling like I needed a little more rest, right? 9 a.m. was where it started. And when it was warm out, we were up at 4 or 5 a.m., 6 a.m. really at the latest when I started these. And so it made sense for me to be popping on at 9. So just another reminder that these are starting now at 10 a.m. just to give me a little more flow, right? That's all this Mars and Taurus Lord of the Year is asking for. So 10 a.m. start time, Tuesday mornings. So we're finishing November and heading into December this week. And there are some other shifts that are happening. Mercury and Venus are both changing signs this week. We're coming out of the shape-shifting full moon, Gemini full moon. And so there's some shifts and changes and things that are occurring with the energy as we move through the week. And the Gemini full moon that we're coming out of, right? So that was exact yesterday on the 27th. And last week, the Sun and Mars both entered into Sagittarius. And then we had the full moon with the Sun in Sag and the moon in Gemini. And this is the second full moon where Mars has been present in the sky with the Sun. And so the moon opposite, kind of looking at it. So Martian themes really present. We can see that very much in the collective. In your own experience, as always, this energy is going to show up differently based on how it's hitting your chart. So that Gemini full moon was at 4 degrees of Gemini, which is a mutable air sign. So if you have air signs or mutable signs and placements present around those early degrees, you may have been feeling this more than some other people. It was a tricky full moon. We're still under that energy. The moon is still in Gemini. The other thing that was happening, and I posted more about this on Patreon. I did like a little written post about the full moon. So that's there if you want to take a look at that and haven't seen it yet. But the Gemini full moon is, still present. We're going to be working with it all week long. And so full moons are culminations, they're endings, they're points of completion, they're peak moments in a cycle or in a process. They can be exciting, celebratory. It can also indicate to us or show us where we're ready to release something because of that ending culmination part of the process that is shown up in the full moon. Yeah, so we're feeling that full moon. We're feeling those planets shifting into Sagittarius as we move into this next week. And then this week we have Venus active in the sky. It's coming off of that opposition to Chiron that was exact last week. And now Venus will meet the South Node. So Mercury, the Sun, and Mars already did this a couple months ago as they moved through the end of Libra season. And they hit this conjunction to the South Node, and then they squared Pluto. And that same thing is going to happen to Venus before it moves into Scorpio. So Venus is trailing a little bit later this year because of that retrograde cycle. So all the other planets already moved through this part of the chart, and Venus now sweeps through to bring some nurturing or some support or some love or some beauty to that area of the chart and whatever those other planets had been working on as they were moving through that part of the chart. So Venus's action in the sky this week, she's finishing out the time in its home sign of Libra. And so Venus is going to feel like really wanting to get things done, really be active to make things happen as it's still resourced in its home sign. But it's going to be coming up with purge points and places of change and shift and transformation and depth and intensity as it meets up with the South Node and with Pluto, and then it dives into Scorpio. So Venus is moving through its own cathartic release as Venus moves into Scorpio and then through December moves through Scorpio. It's going to be squaring the part of the chart where it was doing its retrograde. And so what this indicates is Venus is our Venus things, right? So relationships, finances, relating to anything, beauty, aesthetic, justice, advocacy, connections, all of these Venusian themes are going to get tested and going to go through another kind of like process of release, right? Of awareness of Venus is our values and what we value and how we relate to the things that we value. And so it may come up very clear here how we are moving out of alignment with our values, or what in our life is out of alignment with our values. And those things are going to go through some kind of transformation as they hit this conjunction to the South Node this week. And also later this week, the square to Pluto. Both things really indicating an intense depth and release, some kind of cathartic creation that comes from the death of something else. And that's all just squaring us up for Venus to then move through Scorpio. And that takes a decent chunk of the month of December for Venus to move through Scorpio. So we're in it. So this week, it's really a moment of what is out of alignment with our values? What is keeping us from being in alignment with our values? Where do we not feel valued? Our self-worth, our resources, our finances, our connections with other people, our connections with the things that we own, the things that fill our space, right? Where those things are out of alignment are going to be asked to be released this week so that we can get into deeper alignment with our values. That's what Venus rules over, right? And so this week, Venus kind of starts that deep dive into the depths. And so we'll talk about that more as we go through. But that's what Venus is doing. Mercury is also doing some things to note. Mercury is now in its pre-retrograde shadow. Mercury's retrograde starts in Capricorn and moves Mercury back into Sagittarius. So it's going to come back into where it is now. So the mercurial things that we're moving through now maybe are something we're going to have to come back to and do again. And so Mercury is in its pre-retrograde shadow, and it's finishing up its time in Sagittarius for the first time this week as it moves into Capricorn later this week. So I think it's December 1st, Mercury moves into Capricorn. And then by like the 13th, Mercury stations retrograde and starts to move back and moves back into Sagittarius. And so, which is where it ends December. And so Mercury, what's happening with Mercury in your experience now is also important. And remember that Mercury just ruled that Gemini full moon. So tying in all of the stuff that's happening in this Gemini full moon as well. The moon today is finishing out its time in Gemini. It's still there in that same part of the chart. And it's there until the wee hours of the morning when it moves into Cancer. And then it'll move all the way through to Virgo by the end of this week that we're going to talk about. So by Tuesday, it's into Virgo, and we're now moving into the fourth quarter moon phase, meaning we're out of the full moon at that point. Once it moves into Virgo, we're out of full moon energy territory and we're into last quarter moon phase, which is a deeper release, what we haven't been able to release now quickens the pace. There's some kind of anticipation or crisis moment in our emotional process that speeds it up to get us ready to let go of anything else that's needed to be let go of before we move into the new moon. Right, because when we talk about the moon phases, the new moon is when we start fresh, right? It's the new part of the emotional or the internal process and cycle. And so that lasts for a week, and then we get to the first quarter moon, right? As the light is building, we get to the first quarter moon, and that's when the moon is in its first square to the sun in the sky. And that's that first checkpoint of whatever was starting and whatever seeds were planted at the new moon. That first quarter moon is that first 90-degree angle in the chart. It's that first square in the sky from the moon to the sun. And so it's that first point of checking in on how those seeds are doing, how that growth is going. So where things are out of alignment, we shift, right? We pivot, we move to continue to grow and manifest until we get to the next week, which is the full moon, right? So 2 weeks after the new moon, we have the full moon. And that's when it's at its growing, it's at its peak, right? Whatever this cycle, process, seeds, whatever. They get to the full moon, it's at its peak. And then at its peak, we can see what we want to keep, what we can harvest, what we can celebrate, and what we can release as the light wanes. So over that next week, which is where we are now, the week from the full moon to the third quarter moon phase. And so for that week, for this week, we're at that point of noticing what's come to an ending, celebrating where we can, harvesting what we can, recognizing what's ready to be released, and pivoting and shifting so that we can finish out this cycle and start a new one. When we get to the third quarter moon phase, it's like, oh shit, we're almost to the end of the cycle. What is still overflowing? What needs to be dealt with? It's kind of like this antsy kind of push to release, or like angst around what we're holding, or crisis point in our emotional process. Like, this is where we can get frustrated that like, I'm still getting upset about this thing, right? And then we move from the third quarter moon phase through that fourth quarter into the new moon, well, the dark moon, the balsamic moon, and then the new moon, where again we start that new cycle again. So just a quick moon cycles moment for anybody that needed it. I hope it was helpful. But again, the moon is related to our internal processes, our emotions, our dreams, our instincts, our memories, our subconscious, so much else, our shadows, etc. So those are the moon things that are happening, and those are the main things that we're watching this week: Mercury, Venus, and the moon doing its moon thing. And so that's the general kind of like overview of what we're going to be watching this week. And now I'm just going to take a little moment to pause, sip, be for a second, and then we can get into like the day by day, which again I have a lot. We'll just see how it flows when I get in there. And then I have the tarot ready, cards ready, and we'll just see what happens. Again, if you have questions, comments, concerns, if you want to check in about how you've been, how have I been, a little check in. Let's see. Here's the thing. In reality-based life, things are a struggle right now for me. Things are a struggle. If you put it all on paper, you would say that I would be not doing well. But emotionally and spiritually and energetically, I feel very aligned, which allows me to recognize and put the physical reality things on the spectrum where they need to be, right? Sometimes if I can't pay a bill, or I don't have, what I need tangibly, it can really throw off all of my defense mechanisms, and it can really take me to a place that is a struggle. We've all been there. I still hit those places, but right now I'm able to kind of manage them both in a nice way, and that's felt really supportive. And so, I can appreciate the depths and intensity of Scorpio season that have helped me get to that place. But that's how I'm feeling right now. That could change literally at any moment. Um, but that's where I am. There's a lot of stuff, my phone is currently uh turned off, not working. Because I got to pay that bill. We have stuff with the DHHR we have to deal with. So like there's things, tangible things that like are a struggle. And also I feel well and aligned and fulfilled emotionally and spiritually and energetically. And so that helps me be able to like hold and move through that stuff without it tanking me right now, today, right now. So that's where I am. Let me know where you are. I'm gonna pause and then we'll be back. If you're here on the replay, feel free to pop out into the comments. Let me know how you're doing, what you're holding, what you're looking forward to, etc., etc. Okay. Um, Hi. Okay, so I paused the recording. Um, as to cut off some of the dead time. So I hope that that was helpful. But that's also why I use the chapters, um, so that you can, skip through. I try to make it decently easy to deal with when watching, because I understand that like the way that I put out information and the way that I communicate, like I'm autistic and ADHD and neurodivergent, multiply neurodivergent, just like many of y'all, like most of y'all, so they're not always going to link up. So if there's ever a way that I can make it more accessible for you, um, you know, keep in mind that once these get edited, the chapters are there. If you watch on YouTube, you can speed up the always listen to things on like 1.5 or 2 time. Just because of my audio processing, and often that's also with captions. So like I do 2 time, but I also have to have the captions. Um, it's going to be different for everybody. So if you need to speed up my communication, you could do that. If you need to slow it down, you can do that as well. The captions are here because I know that many of you are just learning a lot of these terms that I talk about here. So I try to make sure that everything's spelled correctly so that you can look it up if you want to look it up somewhere else or ask me about it, or search it in Patreon to see if I've talked more about it somewhere else. So I try to make it accessible, but I don't image descriptions. I really struggle with it. So if there are people in here that specifically need that, use that, would find it beneficial, please let me know, and that'll encourage me to do it or ask for May's assistance, who sometimes in the past has helped me do those, because I just have a hang up with them. I don't know what it is. I struggle to do them. So not like to actually do them, but like to know what to say and to, I don't know. There's just this, it's difficult for me. But anyway, my point is, if I can make it more accessible for you to be here, please let me know. Please let me know. All right. So again, we're looking at Venus this week. We're looking at Mercury this week. At the end of this week, I mean now really, Neptune's moving very slowly in the sky. Neptune will station direct next week, but as it does so, it kicks some things up that make us feel confused, make us feel like this lack of clarity or brain fog, or feeling lethargic, or like our energy's drained. That's all possible when Neptune is stationing. Okay. But generally things are moving, the Sun and Mars moved into Sagittarius last week, and they hit a direct square to Saturn. And that was difficult. That energy is difficult. And so we've moved through something. Maybe it wasn't as difficult as we thought it would be. Maybe it was more difficult than we thought it would be. Maybe we're still dealing with some of the things that came up under that. But as the Sun and Mars move away from that square to Saturn, there's an ability to move past something, to transition on from something, to, we're in Sagittarius. That's the archer, the explorer, the philosopher, the traveler, the expander, and so there's an adventure physically or mentally or emotionally or whatever. It all depends on where Sagittarius falls in your chart and what energies are in there via points or placements or aspects. But there's some kind of adventure or journey that is being asked for. And as those planets move away from the square to Saturn, it's a little bit easier for us to go there. We've dealt with some of the like responsibility things, or are dealing with, or being asked to deal with things that we are responsible for. Reality-based tasks. And so as that's happening, there's it's getting away from that harsh square to Saturn. So we can take what we've learned and the responsibilities have been done, and now we can kind of move on to the journey, or move past the thing, or there's motion that can happen here. There's motion. The thing is, though, remember that Neptune is stationing, and the Sun and Mars are both going to come into a square to Neptune at the end of their cycle in Sagittarius. And so we might think that we're like taking off and ready to move into something new. And just keep in mind that we might not see the whole picture, because that Neptune cloud is present, because Neptune is stationing next week, and then they come into those squares a couple weeks later. So Neptune is present. Mercury's just coming out of that square to Neptune now, and we'll square Neptune, again when it retrogrades back. And that happens at the end of December. And so just keeping in mind that we don't have all the information still. So as we move forward, allowing ourselves to play and adventure and learn and grow, but try not to get too stuck in this is how it's going to look forever, or I know all the information, so let me make decisions based on that. Keep in mind that there's still a lot of information we don't have, because Mercury is going to go retrograde. So that alone tells us we're in the shadow phase of that. So that alone tells us that Mercury is going to be back here where we are this week again. And so there's more to learn of whatever it is that we're moving through. So just keep that part in mind as you make your plans and you do your things and you live your life, that some of these things we might have to come back to. And that's okay. That's a natural part of the cycles, right? Remember, Mercury does this retrograde 3 times a year. It is very much a regular part of our cycle. It's a time for us to integrate things in a deeper way, to understand things in a deeper way. And so as we come into that Mercury retrograde cycle, we can keep in mind that it's just a natural part, nothing to fear or be concerned about. It's just an invitation to slow down, to take a look around at what we have, what we hold, what we're moving through, and give it our attention, to focus our attention on things in a deeper way, because Mercury is busy doing other things. And so the support's not there. So we have to slow down and really take our time with that mercurial stuff. Now, if you have, well, yeah, we won't get into the detriment and all that other stuff. But just keep in mind that we don't have all of the information as we move into these next weeks. But we have to live our life and we have to make decisions. And so just making the decisions, knowing that we don't have all of the information quite yet. And that can be helpful just to hold it all. Okay. So let's get into the astrology charts. Okay, so here's the chart of the moment. So we have the sun at 6 degrees of Sagittarius, conjunct Mars at 3 degrees of Sagittarius. Mars still pulling into that square to Saturn a little bit as we enter this week. We have the main opposition in the sky that we see here is Venus coming into that conjunction with the South Node in Libra, and opposites coming off of that opposition to Chiron and coming into that opposition to the North Node. Keeping in mind that when somebody talks about Venus opposite the North Node, it is inferred. Is that the right word? When you like assume? It is assumed that the planet is coming into a conjunction to the South Node, because the North Node and the South Node are always exactly opposite in the sky. So if and when I say Venus is coming into a conjunction with the South Node, then it is just assumed that it's also coming into an opposition to the North Node, right? That's the same thing that happens with the angles, right? So the ascendant and the descendant are always opposite each other. The MC and the IC are always opposite each other in the chart. So if somebody says a conjunction to the ascendant, it's automatically assumed that it's a opposition to the descendant, and the same thing with the MC and the IC. Information, take it or leave it. You don't have to remember it. It's all good. Okay, so that's kind of where we start this week off, as we move in. So we see that the moon is still down here at 21 degrees of Gemini. It's going to be in Gemini all of the day today. So touching that part of your chart, this allows us to be a little more chatty, a little more social. It is going to come into that exact square to Neptune and then opposite Mercury later today. So just keeping in mind how that feels for you based on your own chart and where it's hitting. So if you have late degree mutable placements or points, this transit is really going to be activating it. If you have any late degree stuff, it's going to be activated. We have the nodes here at 24. We have Venus at 22. We have Mercury at 26, Pluto at 28, Neptune at 24 degrees. I'm going to sneeze 1 second. Okay. So if you have late degree things, Uranus at 20 degrees and the moon moving through 20 to 29 degrees today, your stuff's going to be activated today. So it could be a fun day to kind of take a look and see how that's playing out in your chart. Okay, but there's nothing exact that happens today. Then we get to the 29th. This is Wednesday. And we do have some things that are happening exact today. So on this day, this is the day that Venus moves into the conjunction with the South Node here at 24 degrees of Libra. So that happens a little bit later, but we're feeling it all day. We're feeling it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday really hard this week. And so as those come together, remember that the South Node is a releasing point. It's not about our personality, it's about our destiny. It's about, the South Node is our evolution. It's where we come from. So this is intergenerational patterns. This is stuff that we've brought forward from past lives. This is stuff that we've learned from programming. This is deep conditioned or soul level gunk. When we talk about the South Node, we talk about a purging point. So this is like the stuff that we're ready to release. There's this like purging that comes with the South Node. And so as Venus, our values, our relationships, our finances, our self-worth, our confidence, our beauty, our aesthetic, all of these Venusian themes come into a conversation with the South Node. And in the conjunction with the South Node, it's opposite the North Node, right? So Venus opposite the North Node speaks to noticing, because in opposition, we can see play out as like a mirroring or an out of balance or out of alignment. And so the North Node is like our fate, it's our destiny, it's our karmic evolution, it's where we're headed, it's the hunger that we have for this life. And so as we move towards that, right, the North Node, we're moving away from our South Node. But this is the opposite, right? Our Venus stuff is moving into a conjunction with the South Node. And so it's opposite the North Node. And so it can see where our values are out of alignment with our destiny, our karmic evolution, our journey in this life, right? So we can see where things are ready to be released with that South Node conjunction. I hope that made sense. So this is kind of like karmic and fated stuff. This is releasing deep and heavy things about what we hold value in and why, and all of the kind of tanglings that Venus will continue to move through as it moves into Scorpio and through Scorpio through December. But that's what's coming up here on Wednesday. We also have an exact quincunx between the Sun and Jupiter. And so this is a shifting of our blessings, right? This is about showing up in our confidence, and we might feel a little bit like off. That's really fueling this Venus conjunction to the South Node energy. And so recognize where relationships are feeling uncomfortable, where relating is feeling uncomfortable. That's to others, to the world around you, to your body. Noticing what's uncomfortable when these quincunxes show up, because we also have another quincunx that's coming into its exact the next day. But there's this itching under the surface that makes us just feel a little bit off, or just a little bit off under this energy, and irritable even. And so noticing those kind of like undercurrents that are coming up here under this energy. Because it really is fueling that opposition between like what we value and how we show up for the things that we value, or don't show up for the things that we value, or in alignment with our values, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so then we get to Thursday, and the moon is mid Cancer on this day. So it's moving through, coming into a square to Chiron early in the morning. And then, it continues to move through, and it will hit square to the nodal axis later in this day, and to Venus. And so there can be some moon emotional stuff that comes up with the moon in Cancer. We can just feel like we want to be at home in our own space, or we may feel more emotional as the moon moves through this part of the sky. Having these conversations with the planets in Aries and in Libra, and then later with Pluto in Capricorn. So that last trek of the moon through Cancer can be a little bit emotional, a little bit intense as we move through it. So just keeping that in mind and putting your bumpers up around Thursday and Friday for that energy, if you're someone who is activated by the moon's transits. And we only know if we know. So taking the time just to notice that this is a moony kind of moment. And if you're feeling it, then maybe you're somebody that's a moony kind of being. So as the moon moves through that part of the sky. We also have that exact quincunx between Venus and Neptune on this day. And this can be really dreamy. This can also be really uncomfortable dreams or uncomfortable relationships. This can be getting gaslit in a situation, or just misunderstood, or just having a hard time kind of relating, is possible here. This can also be really romanticizing a situation, or really lacking boundaries. There can be some stuff coming up around needing to put boundaries in place under this quincunx between Venus and Neptune. So that stuff's all present here. Again, feeling it the day before, this day, and the day after. And then we get into Friday, and the moon at this point, by mid-morning Eastern time, is past that exact opposition with Pluto. But that's happening early in the morning. On Friday, is the moon is opposite Pluto, and that can take us into the depths. This has been a common theme as the moon has been moving through Cancer these last few months with Pluto there. But that's the only main thing that's happening on this day, other than Mercury is moving from Sagittarius into Capricorn on December 1st. So on this day, Mercury enters a new sign, a new part of your chart, a new house if you use whole house systems. So just noting it. And remember that we're in pre-retro shade. So this is all, Mercury is going to come back over all of this stuff again. So whatever the Capricorn Sagittarius axis is of your chart, Mercury's doing some work there. So notice if you have any placements between about 25 degrees of Sagittarius to about 15 degrees of Capricorn. I'm not sure of the exact degrees yet. I'd have to look at it, and I guess we can. Why can't we? We're right here. Retrogrades, Mercury. So on the 13th, yeah, so about 12 degrees of Capricorn, because it stations at 8 degrees of Capricorn and 22 degrees of Sagittarius. So anywhere from 20 degrees of Sag to 12 degrees of Capricorn is really going to be activated by this Mercury retrograde. Okay. I didn't do the run through of the charts. I'll do that at the end if I remember. Okay, so that is Friday. Mercury moves into Capricorn and the moon will move into Leo. And then on Saturn's day, on December the 2nd, we have a sextile that happens between Mercury in Capricorn, freshly at 1 degrees of Capricorn, and a sextile to Saturn at 1 degree of Pisces. And this is really supportive. This can allow us to get things done. Saturn's day, ruled by Saturn on Saturday, in a really nice conversation with Mercury. And these two planets like to get tasks done. They like to send the emails, have the communication, do the boundary laying, do the structure laying, do the planning, do the editing, they like to do the things and get them done. And when they're in a sextile, it can be flowing and supportive. So this Saturn's day on December the 2nd could be very Saturnian. It could be very nice. It's Capricorn and Pisces, which allows us to go deep into not only the reality of this world, but also other things. So if you're looking to do any kind of spiritual or energetic work, this energy is really supportive of that as well. I really love this sextile. Yeah, I really, really enjoy this sextile for getting things done. So depending on where it falls in your chart, this can also be having a conversation with your boss, your landlord, a parent, an elder, learning something from someone else, getting wisdom from someone else. There's so much that can happen within this sextile. And actually, let's take a moment, just because why not? Why not? To look at Mercury and Saturn via the Archetypal Universe by Ren Butler book that I reference and enjoy. So we'll go Mercury and Saturn. Okay, so Mercury and Saturn principles. When together, they offer gifts of mental focus and discipline, careful thought and speech, brevity and understatement, common sense and realism, tendencies towards, okay, this is like the more like if it were in a square or an opposition, or if this aspect is squaring or opposing something in your chart, it can lead to tendencies towards worry and pessimism, limited or narrow perceptions, a cynical or pragmatic attitude when Mercury and Saturn are together, right? So that's kind of like the shadowy qualities. So just keeping in mind that it can play out in either way, but when it's in this sextile collectively, that's going to be supportive. So it'll be the first kind of things that we talked about. Skillful editing, tackling difficult problems, natural understatement, tact, detail-oriented mind, qualities of concreteness and precision, well-organized lists and outlines, linear thinking and logic, a respect for academic authority and traditions, powers of critical thought and discrimination, self-evident truths, common sense and realism, systemic observation, inductive reasoning. Yeah, so this is good for getting things done, right? Like, so there's that little Mercury Saturn tidbit. And that's exact on Saturday, but you know, if we go back, it starts to really pick up. Well, Wednesday, you can see the faint line, you know, they're 4 or 5 degrees apart. And then by Thursday, they're 3 degrees. And then as soon as Mercury moves into Capricorn, it's really starting to pick up. So by Friday, it's definitely available to work with. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and even into Monday, it's still, you know, there and available. And on that day, we also have additional support coming from Saturn and Venus. So a lot of Saturnian support after the frustrations that Saturn brought to the Sun and Mars last week in those squares. Now there's these trines and sextiles that will help us move through some of whatever responsibility or reality or authority thing that we're dealing with last week. And now we start to have a lot more support around that stuff with Saturn as we move through. So, okay. So again, Saturn's day, we have this sextile. The other thing that we see picking up here is the square between Venus, now at 27 degrees of Libra, and Pluto at 28 degrees of Capricorn. So yeah, so we're feeling this all week, but it starts to really get heavy here over the weekend. So this paired with the sextile with Saturn and Mercury really allows us to go deep. If you're having any kind of like money troubles this weekend, like if you can figure out a way to just do some of the things under this energy, that could be really helpful and supportive. But again, keeping in mind that we don't have all the information still and we're pre-Mercury retrograde. So the things that you're doing now, you might have to come back to and revisit, but that doesn't mean that you don't want to get started on them now, right? Because again, that's a natural flow and a natural cycle that happens. And so, yeah, and it's going to, you know, depend on what's happening for you. But on this day, on Sunday, we have that exact square between Venus and Pluto. Venus, again, is our relationships. It's our finances. It's our values. It's the way that we look and feel sexy. It's the way that we feel in our body, the way that we adorn our body, the way that we create, how fertile we are, and in which ways, all held by Venus coming into a square, which is a hard aspect, a difficult aspect, a tension point with Pluto. Pluto is the planet of shadows and the underworld and, you know, wealth and value, right? Like systemic big values, like billionaires, millionaires, all of that stuff. But when we talk about in our own personal life, this aspect can allow us to go really deep and confront some shadow or some fear or some limitation that we've either been imposing on ourselves or stand up and take back our power in some kind of way, is available here under this energy. But it's a square, so it's not going to be like an easy like step back into my power. You might have to really work for it and really fight for it. And there's another aspect that's coming that's exact on this day, and it's the quincunx between Mars and Jupiter. So a couple days ago we had the Sun and Jupiter in a quincunx, and now we have Mars there, our motivations, our actions, coming into an uncomfortable shift or recognizing something irritating around our confidence or the way that we show up, or conversations with men or father figures or authority, all can be coming up under this energy. And so keep in mind that we have a lot of support lingering. So we have that Saturn Mercury sextile. We also have Venus coming into a trine to Saturn, and we also have the Sun coming into a trine to Chiron. And so there's this building support that's happening, and also Mercury coming into a trine to Jupiter. And so there's this building of support and flowing energy that's coming if we can allow whatever this square is to show us, right? Pluto is tied to the Judgment card in tarot. So whatever comes up here under this energy is important to look at. It's important to be honest about. It's important to recognize where maybe you are the problem in the situation, and also where you are not. It's the Judgment card. It's laying judgment where it needs to be laid, right? Where it deserves to be laid, where it is true to be held. And so if you are picking up energy or taking responsibility for things that are not yours to hold, this is a really good energy for us to be aware of that and let it set it down, or give it to someone else, or send it back, or whatever that process is for you. And if you are someone who or this is a situation where you have been seeing it with a certain set of eyes or a certain perspective, and now you get a new perspective, and you can recognize where there are some things that maybe you have been doing that you can shift to bring power back to yourself, or to call your power back in. This energy is confronting, and it's not hard, it's not easy to hold, but it's really healing and cathartic if we can move through it and hold ourselves in that moment. And this energy is present all week, right? So this square between Venus and Pluto is building all week long. This is just the day that it's exact on Sunday, but we're feeling it all week. And so the invitation is to recognize and hold yourself when the deep things are coming up around Venus stuff, right? Self-worth, finances, resources, relationships, values, valuables, assets, all of these Venusian themes. And the deep, dark Plutonian things, which is also our trauma responses. Pluto holds our, our defense mechanisms. And so when we're moving through any kind of trigger or trauma, Pluto is active. And so this week in a square to Venus, the invitation is not to abandon yourself and to be with yourself as you move through whatever things are coming up here. This is happening with the moon at the end degrees of Leo on this day, and we'll move into Virgo. And as the moon moves into Virgo, we're going to hit that square to the sun. And so that indicates that we're no longer in the full moon phase, and we're into that final quarter moon phase as we prepare to release and get quiet and lose the light as we move into the balsamic and the dark moon, and then into the new moon. But as we get to Moon Day, we now have the moon into Virgo, and nothing is exact on this day. We're just still feeling everything that we already talked about on Sunday. So that's how we finish this week. And then as we get into next week, Venus will move into, I'm sorry, the one thing that does happen on Moon Day is Venus moves into Scorpio. So Venus will start that process, start picking up really heavily on that trine. to Saturn, which is really beautiful. It's a water trine. It can allow us to feel creative and fertile, very fertile under this energy as well. And long-standing relationships and emotional bonds can come up here. A lot of depth can be found, and support and healing can be found through this kind of energy that we're feeling on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, even on Wednesday as we move into next week. So that's where we are. That's where we finish the week. That is your astrology transits. Oh, let me go through the week ahead, day by day. Okay, so this is Tuesday, which is Mars's day. Wednesday, which is Mercury's day. Thursday, which is Jupiter's day. Friday, Venus's day. Saturn's day. The Sun's day. And Moon day. Okay. So if you like to see the aspects and the planets as they move through the week, there you go. Okay, so here's the thing. We're into a new month of December. And I don't know whether I want to go through December's astrology here today or do that next week. By next week we'll already be into it, but December's astrology is interesting. Maybe I'll wait. I'll post something on the 1st or the 2nd on Patreon, and then we'll go through it more in the Mars day. Okay. So yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna pause and then we can get into some tarot. I did kind of want to just take a look and see what planet is really present for us here. Okay. So today we're using one of my Alice in Wonderland decks. Just hadn't used it in a while. It's a pip deck, which I'm not necessarily a huge fan of. And a pip deck is like it's a deck that has just the number of whatever, like this is teacups, and it's the 10? Yeah. It's the 10 of teacups, and there's just 10 teacups. Like it doesn't give you an image. Like if you think of the Smith Rider-Waite deck or any, the other like main decks, there's like images for the cards. If I had one, I'd show you, but I don't. So scroll back in the Tarot with Mary post if you would like, or Google it, or don't. You don't have to. But anyway, it's a pip deck, and I'm not a huge fan of pip decks, so I don't often use them. Although I think this is like a cutesy little deck. And I know that a lot of people say like not to use these decks. Like this was gifted to me by a former patron. And I appreciate it. I mean, it was on my list. Like I'm a big Alice in Wonderland fan. Like big. And they knew that. They know that. And so they had got me this, and I love it. But it's like the actual Disney version, which I never would have bought because but I appreciate having it. But anyway, people tell me like you're not supposed to use them Those are like collectors, they're not real, blah, 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 but that's not the way that I that's not the way that I use things, right? Like I'm not someone who has a whole bunch of things that don't get used. Like if I have something, it's because I use it. Um, my grandmother taught me that a long time ago. It's in my bones. And also when we had to, sell our house, not had to, when we decided to sell the house and live in an RV, um, we really had to get rid of things that we didn't use or weren't useful. Um, and so listen, I understand like collecting things and keeping them pristine. That's just not me. That's just not me. Um, so if you're having those thoughts about me using this deck, there's my explanation. That's interesting. That's wild. I just had all these like flop over, and they are all major arcana cards. Okay. All right, I'm gonna stop talking and get serious about the tarot. Oh, the shirt keeps riding up. And it's so funny that shirts can make me feel like I'm choking, but I literally wear this 90s choker and it doesn't do that. All it does is give me comfort. Okay. So, as always, I invite you to take the time and space that you need to receive the messages that come forward today. If you're here on the replay, you can always pause to center, ground, or come back at a time when you feel like you would like to or are more able to receive any messages that come forward intuitively. Remember that there are multiple messages in each of the cards that we pull. And I always invite you to take the time and space to be with whatever comes up for you organically and intuitively when you see the cards here. Taking time to notice and note anything that comes forward for you, anything you feel, any memories that come up, any resonance or resistance to the card or to the exercise in general are important to note and notice as we come into the space. No judgment around what comes up for you. It doesn't have to match anything that we've talked about today or anything that I will talk about with this card in the future. Your intuitive wisdom and guidance is important to honor in your own journey. So today we're just looking for a card of support and guidance for the week ahead as we end November and head into December 2023. A card of support, guidance, resource, nourishment, companionship as we move through the week. For the people that are here on my Patreon, watching live or on the replay, reading the tarot with Mary. A card of support and guidance for the week ahead. Again, noticing anything that sticks out for you. This is linked to the Lover's card in tarot. The Lover's card linked to Gemini, coming off of our Gemini full moon. Card of support and guidance for the week ahead. Feel free to have your process with this card. I will post it on Instagram, and then hopefully get to Tarot with Mary
about it a little bit later this week. But I know that we've talked about the lovers card before, so you can also type in to the search bar on Patreon lovers and see other things that come up. There's also a collection of tarot and oracle. You can search it that way. If you're interested in learning more, you can also always just Google the cards and see what comes up organically there and follow your intuition through the webs of the internet. To do your process. But I always love to hear what comes up for you organically as you see the cards and you sit with the cards, as you listen to what I talk about and get into the energy of the week ahead. Things are changing, things are moving. Stay with yourself, hold yourself, be with yourself. Remember that you and your actions are not happening in a vacuum. They do matter, and other people's lives are influenced by how you move and react in the world. I'm honored to be in space with you and share this time with you. Thank you for being here with me and continuing to support me and exchange resource with me. It is an honor and a pleasure and a privilege to be here. Thank you so much. I hope that you have a week. Let me know how you're doing if you feel like it, in whatever way you feel like it, and we will chat. Have a week.